What do Kardashians, Paris Hilton, and your boss have in common? Unlike you, they base their success not on knowledge or skills, but on virtues. And not any virtues, but specific ones. Welcome to the Virtuology series. In this module on the topic of virtues, find out what virtues really are and why they are the golden mean, our capital and the currency of the 21st century. Where do virtues draw their power from? Their connection with the numbers pi and phi, and the creative power of the number 3. Virtues versus mental states and soft skills. Today, most life coaches speak about virtues and how it is important to have them, as if they were beads on a string or coins in a pocket. But Virtuology promotes virtues not as something to have, but as something to be, or to activate and cultivate, because they are already part of human nature, not something to acquire or possess. Philosophically speaking, virtue is the capacity of the soul to act appropriately in every situation. Official definitions of virtues are: virtues are psychological and behavioral characteristics that guide a person towards integrative and positive or even noble purposes for self and the world. Virtue is a habitual disposition of good judgment, feeling, and action, the excellence of character that has personal and civic dimensions. Virtue is affective and cognitive disposition oriented toward notions of the good life or human flourishing. Virtues are essential and favorable features of sentient beings, determining their character. Also, virtues are our shield against the gossip of others. You wish. Another official definition: virtue is when someone gives you the last piece of their chocolate, even while on a diet. We are going to give you an improved definition in due course, so keep with us. When we talk about virtues, we don't refer to just a few of them, such as morality, nobleness, kindness, and honor, as many people reduce virtues to that, but we refer to all of them. There are so many of them that we can't name them all now, so here are only some of them: love, compassion, empathy, gratitude, responsibility, authenticity, enterpriseness, self-initiative or proactivity, resourcefulness, flexibility, self-discipline, self-control, diligence, courage, generosity, joyousness, enthusiasm, optimism, perseverance, persistence, dedication, determination, resoluteness, consistency, endurance, resilience, fortitude, patience, faith, self-confidence, credibility or trustworthiness, trustfulness, reliability, integrity, honesty, sincerity, honor, justness, wisdom, creativity, imaginativeness, inventiveness, humbleness, modesty, temperance, curiosity, open-mindedness, kindness, inner peace, and others. At first glance, you may think that some of the virtues mentioned are rather emotions or attitudes or abilities. There are also other synonyms for virtues like qualities, strengths, assets, attributes, etc. They are all valid labels. However, in order not to lose ourselves in terminologies and interpretations, we would like to start by clearing up any possible misunderstandings. Virtues are a union of the psychological, that is mental and emotional, physical and spiritual aspects. Unlike the attitudes, emotions and actions, besides the psychophysiological component, virtues include also the spiritual one, which plays the principal role. Therefore, virtues are more than mere emotions, feelings, states of mind, abilities and actions, because they unite and even multiply them, since, as you know, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. In other words, when any of the modes of consciousness are not experienced just on one level, but on all levels of a human being, then they are virtues. If your head tells you one thing and your heart tells you another, while your deeds tell something else altogether, with obviously your main features contradicting one another, needless to say that discord and conflict cannot possibly signify a virtue. For example, if you love someone, but have doubts and reservations towards them, and you criticize them, or you have jealous outbursts, this mere emotional love is not a virtue. Your love is not a virtue if you just feel love, but do not express it. In that case, your love is just an emotion. No wonder then such love hurts. Likewise, many people love their job or their kids in their minds, but their love doesn't show, and they don't even feel it often enough, as they just love in theory, not in praxis. Here too, that is not a virtue, but only a mental state. When your love is stuck on some level, whether in your head or heart or mere talk, then it is not a virtue, because virtue is a union of all levels of your being, with emphasis on positivity. Virtues are not always what they seem. They are not what they are often perceived to be. Most people think of virtues in terms of extremes, which is incorrect. For instance, we perceive someone to be loving only if the person expresses love in its extreme forms, such as exceptionally loving gestures and words. However, when a person does something we don't like or punishes us, we immediately think he or she doesn't love us and is not a loving person. For example, when a parent doesn't allow his or her child to go out, or forces him to study instead of playing, or even punishes the child, do you think such a parent doesn't love a child? A parent does it in most cases out of love, even if children don't agree or understand it. It is an expression of love. So how do we define a virtue so that its value would be clear to everyone? If we define it the same as dictionaries, lexicons, and encyclopedias do, then it would not give it full justice or the full picture. Virtue is more than moral excellence, goodness, and righteousness, more than conformity of one's life and conduct to moral and ethical principles, uprightness, more than conformity to a standard of right, more than a beneficial or commendable quality, as dictionaries put it. The word virtue itself is derived from the Latin virtus and has connotations of honor, the worthiness of differential respect, and civic duty. But nowadays, virtues are a blanket term for a whole range of qualities, and so are their connotations broader. Wikipedia defines virtue as a positive trait, or a quality deemed to be morally good, and thus is valued as a foundation of principle and good moral being. This reduces virtues to morality, but many virtues have nothing to do with being moral, such as inner joy, hope, optimism, patience, self-confidence, perseverance, courage, and many others. These definitions are all true, but are not telling the whole truth. To discover the whole truth, we need to go beyond linguistics and refer to philosophy, religion, spirituality, economics, and some other fields for guidance. In our view, true virtue is what you get when you transcend a positive emotion or a state of mind and allow it to be more, to be not something you do, think, or feel, but something you are. Virtues are a way of being in the world. They are constructive modes of consciousness that construct favorable character traits and create positive effects. Virtues are human excellences, the assets that play a key role in a person's positive life course and in the quality of civil society. Virtues promote human flourishing. However, they are not simply a means to an end. What is most important about virtues is that they are key factors to a successful, fulfilled and happy life, expressing itself as a golden mean between two extremes of personal traits. What virtues are not, they are not the opposite of anything, such as the opposite of flaws, as they are also not an extreme of anything. Therefore, virtues can be truly defined as constructive modes of consciousness that integrate and harmonize the psychological, physical, and spiritual aspects of a being and are indispensable means of well-being. Virtuology is accordingly an empowering system facilitating the activation and cultivation of virtues by unifying and harmonizing the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual dimensions of being, and by raising consciousness with the aim of establishing complete and lasting prosperity. When you match a thought and an emotion, you get a belief. When you match a thought, emotion, and conduct, you have a virtue or a flaw, depending on whether those three are positive or negative. The power of three. The power of virtues lies in the power of three and beyond. Recognizing the aspects of your being, mental, emotional, and physical, you harness the constructive power of number 3. Unfortunately, most people think one thing and do or feel something else. So this discord and discrepancy diminish their power. But when you unify these 3 aspects, that is, when you homogeneously direct your virtuous thoughts, emotions, and actions, then these aspects of your being complement and empower each other, which gives you the power to materialize your thoughts, to turn your dreams into reality. Being successful in anything depends on your ability to harness this trinity, to build strong coherence of these 3 aspects of your being in all your units, such as family, team, friends, political party, etc. There is also the trinity of knowledge, skills, and virtues that give you the power to create an ideal reality. The essence of number 3 is creative power. 3 is the smallest number of elements required to create a pattern. To create a form, we need a minimum of 3 points. The number 3 is known to be the number for creation, formation, transformation, growth, and progress, which are exactly the effects of virtues. Virtues create results and progress by synchronizing the 3 dimensions of being: mental, emotional, and physical, 3 pillars of success: knowledge, skills, and virtues, and 3 norms: virtuification, the golden mean, and the golden rule. These 3 triads form the Virtuology Enneagram, which is a tool for raising consciousness or virtuification. 3 stands for that which is solid, real, true, substantial, complete, and entire. According to the Latin phrase omne trium perfectum, everything that comes in threes is perfect. This true and reinforces the power of 3. The latent power of virtues is not always obvious to plain eyes, as it is subtle, profound, and immeasurable. If you are only interested in superficial, loud, big, and quick formats, then you might favor other means of success and so turn blind eye to your innermost assets. However, it is time to re-evaluate your values by examining how your current value system is working for you. Has your set of values related to success, such as external knowledge, education, technology, money, etc., helped you create an ideal life? If not, then it is time for a paradigm shift. It is time to harness the powers of pi and phi, which are inherent in your inborn virtues. We are about to introduce you to the power of the number phi in a bit, so stay put. In the context of virtues, in practical terms, all that means that to harness the power of 3 and virtues, and so unleash your unlimited potential, you need to employ and fuse the 3 forces in you: mental, emotional, and physical. Combine virtues with knowledge and skills, as well as synthesize or neutralize the positive and negative energies. The union of Trinity means overcoming duality, and is naturally more potent than all the usual forms of disunion or dissonance. The number 3 is a dynamic force as it sets things in motion, so every Trinity is primarily about a process for progress. Trinity encapsulates a paradigm of change and transformation. 3 is the major number for manifestation, as is evident in our world that manifests in 3 spatial dimensions and 3 temporal dimensions. For your energies to be able to manifest or materialize, you need the power of 3, that is, the power of virtues, because they integrate 3 dimensions of your being: mental, emotional, and physical. The value of number 3 is also in the union of 2 opposites to create a whole which allows progress. That point of union, the golden mean, is our access point to unlimited potential. Golden mean applied to aesthetics, arts, architecture, mathematics, and geometry is called golden ratio and is represented with the Greek letter phi that has the value of 1.618, etc. Euclid and Renaissance artists called it the divine proportion. The essence of phi, as well as the number 2, is harmony or proportion, which is why phi is important in relationships, aesthetics, and life in general. Many people think that virtues are extremely positive qualities, but they're neutral qualities. As we will now explain, virtues express themselves as the golden mean between two extreme opposites, rather than as extremely positive traits, as some might assume. Virtues are the mean. Virtue is not the far opposite of flaw or vice, because if virtue is taken to the excess and if we flaunt it, it ceases to be a virtue and becomes a flaw. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, who was, by the way, a great advocate for virtues as the means to happiness, defined a virtue as a point between a deficiency and an excess of a trait. Both deficiency and excess are flawed traits. For example, the virtue of generosity falls between the vices of miserliness and profligacy. Courage is a virtue between cowardice and recklessness. Confidence is a virtue between self-deprecation and vanity. Further examples include mistrust, trust, gullibility, inferiority, humbleness and dignity, and arrogance, worry, contentment, and complacency. For instance, to have the virtue of courage, it doesn't mean the opposite of being fearful, as surely doesn't mean to be fearless either, but it is a golden mean between those two extremes. You don't have to be fearless to be courageous. Courage is when you don't give in to your fears, when you face your fears and decide that something else is more important than fear. Maybe that something is some noble cause or a great goal or your family's well-being or whatever. There is a saying that fear has large eyes, but then again, courage has a large heart. It must be noted, though, that virtuous action is not simply splitting the difference between two extremes. The point of greatest virtue lies not in the exact middle, but at the golden mean, which is a bit closer to one extreme than to the other. In Aristotle's sense, virtue is excellence at being human. It is not about being a saint, but about being well balanced. He claimed that virtue is achieved by maintaining the golden mean, which is the fine balance between two excesses. In Chinese philosophy, a similar concept, the doctrine of the mean, was propounded by Confucius, who taught that excess is similar to deficiency, asserting that virtue is a mean between extremes. Buddhist philosophy likewise includes the concept of the middle way. The Greek philosopher Socrates taught that anything that does not in one way or the other possesses measure of the nature of proportion will necessarily corrupt its ingredients and most of all itself. Catholic philosopher Thomas Aquinas argued in his Summa Theologica that Christian morality is consistent with the mean. In his words, it is evident that moral virtue observes the mean. A quote from the Bible: "Do not be over-righteous, neither be over-wise. Why destroy yourself? Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes." Islam too advocates the mean. Muhammad said that the best choice was the middle ground one, or in other words, following the middle path is a virtue. In the Quran, balance and moderation are praised. In simple words, renowned philosophers and sages have claimed that being a virtuous person, it doesn't mean acting out an excess of a positive trait, but to behave somewhere in the middle. That is to say, a virtue is not about being extremely good or something else overly positive, but to be well balanced. This doesn't mean that we can call ourselves virtuous if we are behaving positively more often than negatively. We are not talking about that kind of middle way, but the way between the two opposites, leaning more towards the positive. Given the flow of extremes, there are two ingredients to virtue: proportion and harmony. Whether you are talking with philosophers, psychologists, gurus, business consultants, or yoga instructors, no buzzword seems to rank higher than balance these days. It's an ideal championed by the antique as well as the most modern doyens. As you transition from living unconsciously to more and more consciously, you will notice how easy it is to opt for virtues rather than flaws in any given situation, how easy it is to opt for strength rather than weakness. It is a choice indeed. This realization will empower you to be stronger mentally, emotionally, and physically. Your body is strong when you live in truth. That is, when you act on your soul's guidance, not your ego's, as the module on virtuification will reveal. Our muscles are lie detectors, telling us the truth from lies by showing either strength or weakness when faced with a question. How to use muscles to detect truth and lies is explained in the module on virtuification, in the last segment on using the body to reprogram own cellular memories or subconsciousness. Virtues versus the psychological states. Most people usually view most of virtues as feelings, emotions, and mental states. In other words, rather as psychological or spiritual states than as virtues. Such a view is limited because it reduces each of these qualities only to emotion or mental activity or deed, to something we feel or think or do, rather than something we are. Therefore, those who perceive, for example, love only as feeling or an emotion or a state of mind, they very much limit their capacity and possibility of loving, because they think they can love only when somebody or something arouses love in them. So they live in the conviction that they don't have any impact on their love, but that their love completely depends on others, taste, or some other exterior mystical force. Therefore, they rarely take pleasure in love. However, when you realize that love is not only an emotion or a state of mind, but much more than that, an innate virtue that is a part of your human nature, then this insight opens a whole new dimension to love and takes love to a whole new level. So you may see a rainbow even when there is none. That is where others don't see it. maybe others will tell you off for having your head in the clouds. But hey, better being in the clouds than under the cloud, right? Once you own love as your virtue, as your character trait, and as your asset, so to speak, then it ceases to be a temporary thing and becomes your nature on which you base all your decisions, goals, and actions. You then operate from a place of love rather than ego, that is, from a place of virtue or strength rather than flow or weakness. The same goes for all the other virtues that many perceive only as emotions or states of mind. So, say, joy is not just something we feel, but also a mode of consciousness, a way of being in the world. Virtues versus soft skills. Also, most people usually view some of the virtues more as skills, which they are to some extent, but that is not all they are. When you consider something to be a skill, then you tend to distance yourself from it because you assume it as something you are not, or you don't have, or are supposed to practice and practice hard to hone it. But when you grasp that this is in fact your innate virtue, which you might not have been aware of having, then this new awareness will help you to simply activate and cultivate it. It is about choosing to associate each such quality with virtue or inner strength, with something you are rather than something you do. It is about choosing to see it as a character trait and a way of being in the world, rather than some skill. It is about releasing your inborn virtue, your full potential, and about allowing your virtues to express themselves and allow to be the best version of yourself. Many people think they do not have, say, self-discipline, which is not true. Their false belief stems from the wrong interpretation of self-discipline. They see it as a skill rather than as a virtue. The evidence that they indeed have self-discipline is that they clearly have it in some situations, like in brushing teeth, or waking up early to go to work, or to do many household chores, etc. The fact that they don't have it in some other life situations is only down to a choice. Self-discipline is something we decide, not something we gain or train. We activate it rather than work on it. We choose to associate self-discipline with virtue or inner strength, something we are rather than something we do. And we choose to own it as our character trait and a way of being in the world, the same as we choose to be a good and honest person. The biggest obstacle in the appliance of self-discipline, like with many other virtues, is the misconception that it is a skill that requires much effort, abstaining, and sacrifice in order to attain it. As long as you perceive it as such, you will find it off-putting, unappealing, intimidating, and thus unattainable, but only in the matters you don't care about. As you know it, when you care for or love something, such as your work or workout, you don't need self-discipline for it. That is, that you are naturally disciplinable and consistent in carrying it out because you love and enjoy doing it, or you love what it brings you. The same is with loving somebody. Hence, parents self-disciplinarily do many things which they normally wouldn't do. So, the second biggest obstacle in the appliance of self-discipline is the lack of love. The difficulty with self-discipline can be solved with training, like with honing skills, but rather with activating unconditional love in most cases. In some other cases, all you need is an inspiration to express self-discipline, because when you are inspired, that surge of energy naturally drives you to act, and you are naturally committed without the need for discipline. Another tool to cultivate self-discipline is automation, forming habits and customs so that you do things automatically rather than by effort or disciplining yourself. And of course, knowing your specific why is vital, so that you don't succumb to instant gratification traps and instead maintain your motivation for planned action in favor of delayed, lasting, and profound gratification. Even when it comes to self-discipline in refraining from eating sweets or smoking, there is no need to skillfully train or control your mind, as it is enough to activate the virtue of self-discipline and also help yourself with some of the related virtues, as we have explained it in the module on self-discipline. Virtues are inborn to us, so we do not need to attain them, but affirm them through experience and through belief in their key role in achieving personal happiness and success. The greatest thing about the virtues is that we don't need to learn them or go through troubles of getting them, because we are born with them. Just as with all the organs and natural abilities and functions, we already have all the virtues and know everything there is to know about them, that they serve the good and the growth. The only thing we need is to convince ourselves of their great value and power, and then just activate them and cultivate them. According to Socrates, virtue does not come from wealth, but from virtue come wealth and all other good things for human beings. This was an excerpt from the entire module on virtues. You can get the rest of the inspiring and transformative insights in our Virtuology book and as our member or participant in one of our courses. Among other things, you will find out all about the flows and how to get rid of them, how virtues become flows, how our virtues are innate, how virtues give us power, how virtues are our capital and the currency of the 21st century, and all the advantages of virtues. Enjoy!